Welcome back to the channel. If you're just joining us, we're in the middle of a deep dive into the Parricide Iceberg, a comprehensive look at some of the most disturbing family violence cases in modern history. In Tier 1, we covered the infamous cases that dominated headlines, cases that sparked national conversations and true crime documentaries. In Tier 2, we went deeper, exploring lesser-known stories that still had significant media attention but weren't household names. Now we've reached Tier 3, and this is where things get significantly darker. Children. Some as young as 12 years old. Before we begin, if you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the rest of this series. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I don't have a lot of viewers, but it's always fascinating to see how far these stories reach. And if you appreciate the time and research that goes into these videos, smash that like button. It genuinely helps the algorithm push this content to people who are interested in similar content. The cases in this tier share common threads. Abuse, often severe and prolonged. Mental health crises that went unaddressed. Systems that failed to intervene when warning signs appeared. And in the aftermath, communities left grappling with an impossible question: how could a child do this? There's no sensationalizing here, just the facts, told with the respect these tragic stories deserve. Because behind every case is a victim who lost their life, a family shattered beyond repair, and a young person whose entire future changed in a single, irreversible moment. Let's begin. Catherine and Curtis Jones, Port St. John, Florida, February 1999. Catherine Jones was 13 years old. Her brother Curtis was 12. Together, they became the youngest children in U.S. history to be charged as adults for first-degree murder. The victim was Sonia Nicole Spates, their father's girlfriend. On a February night in 1999, while their father was away, the siblings shot Spates multiple times with a 9mm handgun. When police arrived, they found a crime scene that didn't match the typical pattern of juvenile violence. This wasn't impulsive. The children had planned it. They'd obtained the weapon. They'd waited for the right moment. And afterward, they'd attempted to cover their tracks. But the story behind the crime was more complicated than it first appeared. Both children had been sexually abused, they claimed, by a male relative. When they reported the abuse to their father and Spates, their cries for help were ignored. Child Protective Services had investigated. They documented signs of abuse, but charges were never filed, and the children remained in the same household where the abuse allegedly continued. The siblings' original plan, according to testimony, was far more extensive. They'd plotted to kill 3 people: the relative who abused them, their father, and Spates. But after shooting Spates, they panicked and fled the scene. Police found them shortly after. During the trial, the prosecution argued the primary motive was jealousy of the father's girlfriend, not fear or abuse. Defense attorneys presented evidence of the children's trauma, the documented abuse reports, and the failures of the system meant to protect them. The case became a legal watershed. At 12 and 13, Catherine and Curtis were tried as adults, an extremely rare occurrence that sparked national debate about juvenile justice. Child advocacy groups pointed to the case as evidence that the system criminalizes traumatized children instead of helping them. In 2009, both siblings pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. They each received 18-year sentences. The plea deal meant they would have to register as convicted murderers for life, and they'd face lifelong parole supervision. Catherine and Curtis were released in 2015, when they were 29 and 30 years old. They'd spent more than half their lives behind bars. Curtis had been ordained as a minister in prison, and Catherine had married a pen pal while incarcerated. Upon their release, Catherine wrote about her fears: how to drive, how to fill out job applications, how to function like a normal person after growing up in prison. The Jones case remains controversial. Was justice served? Or did the system fail these children twice, first by ignoring their abuse, and then by treating them as adult criminals? There are no easy answers. But one thing is clear: by the time Catherine and Curtis pulled that trigger, every adult in their lives had already failed them. Alex and Derek King, Cantonment, Florida, November 26, 2001. Alex King was 12 years old. His brother Derek was 13. Together, they beat their father to death with an aluminum baseball bat, set their house on fire, and then disappeared into the night. But this case is about more than two boys who killed their father. It's about manipulation, abuse, and a 40-year-old convicted child molester named Ricky Chavis. Terry King was a single father struggling to raise his two sons alone. Their mother had left years earlier, and Terry did his best despite financial hardships. He was described as religious, kind-hearted, but strict. The family lived in a rural trailer park in Cantonment, near Pensacola. Ricky Chavis was a neighbor who offered to help. He was a mechanic with a large property where local kids would hang out, play video games, and work on cars. Terry didn't know Ricky had been convicted in 1984 for sexually molesting a 13-year-old boy. Ricky took a special interest in Alex. The younger boy started spending more time at Ricky's trailer. He became withdrawn from his father, even started calling Terry by his first name instead of Dad. Terry sensed something was wrong and eventually told the boys they couldn't see Ricky anymore. On the 16th of November, 2001, Terry came home to find Alex and Derek had run away. He suspected they'd gone to Ricky's house. When he confronted Ricky, the man denied seeing them, but the boys were there, hiding in a secret room in Ricky's trailer. For 9 days, Alex and Derek stayed with Ricky. During that time, according to Alex's later testimony, Ricky molested him. He told Alex they were in love, that their relationship was special. He gave the boys marijuana and let them do whatever they wanted. Terry eventually found Derek at his girlfriend's house and brought him home. The next day, November 25th, Ricky returned Alex to his father. That night, according to the boys' confessions, they waited for Terry to fall asleep in his recliner. Then Derek took an aluminum baseball bat and struck his father in the head. Again and again, up to 10 times. Blood and brain matter splattered across the walls, reaching 12 feet away. Terry King was 40 years old. The medical examiner determined he likely remained in the same position throughout the attack if the first blow was hard enough to incapacitate him. After the murder, the boys set the house on fire, trying to destroy the evidence. Then they called Ricky Chavis. Ricky picked them up, took them to his trailer, and washed the blood from their clothes. The next day, he drove them to the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, where they turned themselves in. Both boys confessed. Derek said he'd done the actual killing. Alex said it was his idea. They claimed they were afraid their father would punish them for running away. But the story didn't end there. Ricky Chavis was then charged with first-degree murder. The prosecution's theory was that Ricky had manipulated the boys into killing Terry so he could have unrestricted access to Alex. During Ricky's trial, prosecutor David Rimmer called Alex and Derek as witnesses. The boys testified that they didn't kill their father. They said Ricky was the real killer, that he'd persuaded them to confess falsely. The jury acquitted Ricky Chavis of murder. Then came the boys' trial. The same prosecutor, David Rimmer, now argued that the boys' confessions were true, that Derek had beaten Terry to death, that Alex had planned it, that they were guilty of murder. The legal community was stunned. How could the same prosecutor argue two completely different theories of the same crime? If Ricky was the killer, the boys were innocent. If the boys were the killers, they'd committed perjury at Ricky's trial. A jury convicted Alex and Derek of second-degree murder on the 6th of September 2002, but Judge Frank Bell threw out the conviction. He ruled that the boys' right to due process had been violated. The contradictory prosecutions were fundamentally unfair. The case went to mediation. In November 2002, both brothers pleaded guilty to third-degree murder. Derek was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Alex received 7 years. Both would be held in juvenile facilities. Ricky Chavis was convicted of being an accessory after the fact to murder and tampering with evidence. He received 30 years in prison, the maximum sentence. He was also tried separately for molesting Alex, but despite Alex's testimony about their sexual relationship, Ricky was acquitted. During Alex's testimony, he described how Ricky had groomed him, sitting him on his lap, telling him it was normal for men and boys to kiss, saying they were in love. Alex said he slept in Ricky's room during those 9 days. He said Ricky gave them marijuana, and he said he believed Ricky loved him. The case became a national controversy. Was Ricky Chavis a master manipulator who orchestrated Terry King's murder? Or were Alex and Derek cold-blooded killers who later blamed an adult to escape responsibility? A book titled A Perversion of Justice, A Southern Tragedy of Murder, Lies, and Innocence Betrayed argues the boys were innocent, that Ricky was the real killer. Dateline NBC interviewed the brothers years later in a special called Second Chances. Alex was released from custody in April 2008 at age 18. He'd served 6 years. Derek was released in March 2009 at age 20 after serving 7 years. Both struggled to adapt to life outside. Alex attempted to escape from juvenile detention in 2005, but instead of adding time to his sentence, he was returned to finish his term. He later reconnected with his mother, married, and found labor work, but he battled drug addiction for years. On April 23, 2024, Alex King died of a drug overdose in Missoula, Montana. He was 35 years old. His uncle told reporters that Alex had overdosed multiple times in the weeks before his death. Finally, his heart gave out. Derek continues to live in Florida. He attended college at one point and has tried to build a life. Friends describe him as quirky, religious, and kind-hearted. Ricky Chavis remains incarcerated at Santa Rosa Correctional Institution. He's scheduled for release in November 2031. The King brothers' case raises questions that still have no clear answers. Were Alex and Derek victims of a predator who destroyed their family, or were they killers who manipulated the system? The truth likely exists somewhere in between. Two traumatized children, groomed by a convicted sex offender, made an irreversible choice. Terry King never got justice. Neither, perhaps, did his sons. Bresha Meadows, Warren, Ohio, July 28, 2016. Bresha Meadows was 14 years old when she shot her father, Jonathan Meadows, in the head as he slept on the living room couch. She then called 911. The shooting wasn't disputed. Bresha admitted to pulling the trigger. The question was why. According to Bresha's family, Jonathan Meadows had terrorized them for years. Her mother, Brandy, described decades of abuse: broken ribs, blackened eyes, blood vessels punctured, and threats to kill the entire family. Jonathan would beat Brandy in front of the children, and he kept a gun in the house, which he used to threaten them regularly. In 2011, 5 years before the shooting, Brandy had tried to leave. She filed a police report and obtained a domestic violence protection order. In her statement, she wrote, "In the 17 years of our marriage, he has cut me, broken my ribs, fingers, the blood vessels in my hand, my mouth, and blackened my eyes. I believe my nose was broken. If he finds us, I am 100% sure he will kill me and the children." But Brandy returned to Jonathan. Domestic violence experts note this is tragically common. Leaving an abuser is often the most dangerous time for victims, and many return out of fear, financial dependence, or lack of safe alternatives. For Bresha, life at home was unbearable. In the months before the shooting, she began cutting herself. Her grades plummeted. 2 months before she killed her father, she ran away from home and went to her aunt's house in Cleveland. Bresha told her aunt, Martina Latessa, a Cleveland police detective who specialized in domestic violence cases, that she was terrified. She said Jonathan beat her mother regularly and threatened to kill them all. Latessa knew what was happening. She'd seen it herself. She'd tried to help, but the violence continued. On the night of the shooting, Bresha took her father's gun. While he slept, she shot him once in the head. Then she called the police and waited to be arrested. The case became a national flashpoint. Bresha was charged with aggravated murder, a charge that could have resulted in life in prison if she'd been tried as an adult. For months, prosecutors deliberated whether to move her case to adult court. In December 2016, they announced she would remain in juvenile custody. The hashtag #FreeBresha campaign gained momentum. Activists argued that Bresha was a domestic violence survivor who'd acted in self-defense, protecting not just herself, but her mother and siblings. Criminologist Dr. Kathleen Haida, a leading expert on juvenile parricide, testified that most children who kill parents do so out of desperation after years of severe abuse. Jonathan's family disputed the abuse allegations. His sister called his death cold and calculated and insisted he'd never hurt his family. In May 2017, Bresha accepted a plea deal. She pleaded true, the juvenile equivalent of guilty, to involuntary manslaughter. She was sentenced to 1 year and a day in juvenile detention, plus 6 months in a residential mental health facility, followed by 2 years of probation. Her record would be sealed when she turned 21. At her sentencing, Bresha's attorney, Ian Friedman, said, "This is a good child. She grew up in an environment where every adult failed her. This did not have to happen." Brandy Meadows called her daughter a hero. She said Bresha had saved her life. The case raised uncomfortable questions about how the justice system treats abuse survivors, particularly children and women of color. Bresha spent 10 months in detention before being released to the treatment facility. Some advocates argued she should never have been charged at all. Today, Bresha is free, but her story remains a stark reminder of what can happen when children are forced to save themselves because no one else will. Luke Woodham. Pearl, Mississippi, October 1st, 1997. Luke Woodham was 16 years old, overweight, wore thick glasses, and had been bullied for most of his school life. His mother, Mary Ann, was described by neighbors as overbearing. She micromanaged his appearance, his friendships, and his entire existence. After his parents divorced when he was 8, Luke's father disappeared from his life completely. In early 1997, Luke started dating Christina Menifee, a classmate. Mary Ann supervised their dates, sometimes sitting on the couch with them. Christina eventually broke up with Luke, telling friends he'd become too controlling and that having his mother present was embarrassing. The breakup devastated him. Around the same time, Luke became involved with a group of misfit students who called themselves the Croth. Led by an older teen named Grant Boyette, the group explored role-playing games, paganism, and darker philosophies. In April 1997, Luke and Boyette brutally tortured and killed Luke's family dog, Sparkle. They beat her, set her on fire, and threw her into a pond while she was still alive. Luke wrote about it in his diary. He called it his first kill and said it felt satisfying. On October 1st, 1997, Luke's alarm went off at 5 a.m. He got a butcher knife from the kitchen, grabbed a baseball bat, and went to his mother's bedroom. Mary Ann was in the hallway, preparing for a morning jog. Luke attacked her there. He stabbed and bludgeoned her repeatedly, then forced her into the bedroom and finished the assault. An autopsy later revealed 11 slash wounds and 7 stab wounds, including fatal injuries to her heart and lungs. Luke suffocated her with a pillow to be sure she was dead. Afterward, he cleaned up the scene, washed himself, and drove his mother's car to Pearl High School. He wore a trench coat to conceal a .30 caliber rifle. When he arrived, he handed a manifesto to a friend, Justin Sledge. The manifesto read in part, "I am not insane, I am angry. I killed because people like me are mistreated every day." Then he opened fire. Luke shot his ex-girlfriend, Christina Menifee, and another student, Lydia K. Dew, killing them both. He wounded 7 others before the school's assistant principal, Joel Myrick, confronted him in the parking lot. Myrick had retrieved a .45 caliber pistol from his truck. When Luke tried to flee in his car, he lost control. Myrick detained him at gunpoint until police arrived. In the days after the shooting, police arrested 6 of Luke's friends, charging them with conspiracy to commit murder. Rumors spread that the Croth was a satanic cult. Prosecutors described the group's activities as anti-Christian and anti-society. Luke was tried twice, once for his mother's murder and again for the school shootings. Both times, he claimed he was insane, that demons had spoken to him, that he couldn't remember killing his mother. Both times, juries rejected his insanity defense. He was sentenced to life in prison for Mary Ann's murder, plus 2 additional life sentences for the school killings, and 7 20-year sentences for attempted murder. In total, 3 life terms plus 140 years. He won't be eligible for parole until 2046, when he'll be 65 years old. The Luke Woodham case is often cited as one of the early warning signs of what would become a tragic pattern in American schools. Just 7 months later, the Columbine Massacre would occur, cementing school shootings in the national consciousness. But Luke's case is also a parricide. Before he ever walked into that school, he killed his mother in their home. The school shooting made headlines. The matter-side was almost an afterthought. Today, Luke is incarcerated at the South Mississippi Correctional Institution. He's been denied clemency, and 3 families still carry the weight of October 1st, 1997. Tyler Hadley. Port St. Lucie, Florida, July 16, 2011. At 1:15 p.m. on the 16th of July, 2011, 17-year-old Tyler Hadley posted a status on Facebook. "Party at my crib tonight, maybe." There was one problem. His parents, Blake and Mary Jo Hadley, were home, and they weren't about to let their son throw a party. Tyler had been in trouble recently for drugs and alcohol, and they'd grounded him. They'd even enrolled him in a treatment program he was set to start soon. When friends asked Tyler if the party was really happening, he responded, "Don't know, man, I'm working on it." But by 8:15 p.m., the party was on. Tyler posted again, "Party at my house, hit me up." One friend asked, "What if your parents come home?" Tyler replied, "They won't, trust me." He was right. His parents wouldn't be coming home, because earlier that afternoon, Tyler had taken 3 ecstasy pills. He'd told friends weeks earlier what he planned to do. One friend, Matthew Nobile, had texted him that morning asking if he had done it, and Tyler responded that he hadn't yet, but he was going to. At approximately 5 p.m., Tyler hid his parents' cell phone so they couldn't call for help. He found a claw hammer in the garage. Then he stood behind his mother, Mary Jo, as she worked at the family computer. He stood there for 5 minutes, psyching himself up. Then he swung the hammer. Mary Jo screamed. Blake Hadley, Tyler's father, a big man, 6'4" and 300 pounds, ran out of the bedroom. He saw Tyler attacking his wife. Father and son locked eyes. Blake, overwhelmed with shock, asked, "Why?" Tyler responded, "Why the fuck not?" Then he beat his father to death with the same hammer. Tyler dragged both bodies into the master bedroom. He spent 3 hours cleaning up blood, throwing household items on top of the corpses to hide them. He used Clorox wipes and towels, which he tossed into the bedroom. Then he invited his friends over. About 60 people showed up that night. They played beer pong, smoked cigars, and drank beer. Neighbors complained about the noise. No one knew that Blake and Mary Jo's bodies were locked in the bedroom just feet away. Some partygoers later said they noticed the smell of dead bodies, but they didn't say anything. At some point during the party, Tyler pulled his best friend, Michael Mandel, aside and told him that he had killed his parents. Mandel thought he was joking. Tyler took him to the garage and showed him a bloody footprint. Then he took him to the bedroom. Mandel saw the bodies buried under furniture and household items. He was horrified, but he didn't leave immediately. He even took a selfie with Tyler before departing around 4 a.m. 4 hours after leaving, Mandel called Crime Stoppers and reported the murders. Police arrived while the party was still going. Tyler claimed his parents were out of town and tried to refuse entry, but the police forced their way inside. They found beer bottles everywhere, dried blood on the walls, and when they broke open the master bedroom door, they found Blake and Mary Jo under a pile of furniture. Tyler was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. He initially pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, but later changed his plea to no contest. In 2014, he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. At his sentencing, Judge Robert Meaghamson called the crime brutal, heinous, and premeditated. He accused Tyler of manipulating mental health experts and lying about hearing voices. Tyler's attorney had argued for a lesser sentence, pointing to his age and mental health struggles, but the judge wasn't swayed. A fellow inmate later reported that Tyler signed autographs in jail, called himself Hammer Boy, and drew on news articles about the murders with the phrase, "It's hammer time." In 2018, Tyler received a resentencing hearing due to changes in Florida law regarding juvenile offenders. He could have received a reduced sentence of 40 years with a chance for review after 25, but the judge gave him life again. Michael Mandel testified at the hearing. He was visibly angry, glaring at Tyler from across the courtroom. He said Blake and Mary Jo Hadley were like his second parents. He'd been in denial until he saw their bodies. Tyler remains in prison. He will never be free. The Hadley case shocked Florida, not just because of the brutality of the murders, but because of what Tyler did afterward. The fact that he threw a party, laughed, and posed for pictures. And when his friend discovered the bodies, Tyler showed no remorse. Even now, years later, psychologists struggle to explain Tyler Hadley. Was he a psychopath? Was he desperate to escape his parents' control? Or was he simply a teenager on drugs who made the worst decision imaginable? No answer makes sense. No explanation brings Blake and Mary Jo back. Zachary Davis, Hendersonville, Tennessee. The 10th of August 2012. Zachary Davis was 15 years old when he killed his mother, Melanie, with a sledgehammer. But the warning signs had been there for years. Zachary was born into what seemed like a normal, middle-class family. His father, Chris, died of ALS when Zachary was just 9 years old. The loss devastated him, He fell into a deep depression and was diagnosed with schizophrenia and hearing voices. He was referred to a psychiatrist, Dr. Bradley Freeman at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, who documented significant mental illness from their first meeting. But Melanie stopped bringing Zachary to his appointments, and his treatment was discontinued. The boy who desperately needed help never received it. By high school, Zachary's behavior had become increasingly strange. Classmates described him as an outcast. He wore the same hoodie every day. He spoke only in whispers, as if hiding his real voice. He rarely smiled, and on his phone he had apps about serial killers and torture devices. In his notebook, he'd written, "You can't spell slaughter without laughter." On the 10th of August 2012, Zachary, his mother, and his 16-year-old brother Josh went to see a movie together. When they returned home, Zachary packed a bag. Clothes, notebooks, toothbrushes, gloves, a ski mask, and a claw hammer. It looked like he was planning to run away. But that wasn't the plan at all. At approximately 9 p.m., Melanie went to bed. While she slept, Zachary went to the basement and retrieved a sledgehammer. He entered her room and attacked her, striking her head repeatedly. The medical examiner later determined she'd been hit nearly 20 times. Some blows were shallow, while some were deep. Zachary told police it felt like stabbing a mattress or a marshmallow. After killing his mother, Zachary went to the game room where his brother Josh was sleeping. He attempted to set the room on fire, hoping to kill Josh and destroy the evidence. But Josh had woken up and managed to escape. Zachary fled the house with his packed bag. He threw his cell phone into a ditch so police couldn't trace it. He was found about 10 miles from home, walking along the road. When police questioned him, Zachary showed no emotion. He said he didn't feel anything when he killed his mother. When asked if he would do it again, if he could go back in time, he said, "I would probably kill Josh with a sledgehammer as well." At trial, Zachary claimed his brother had sexually abused him and that their mother had ignored his pleas for help. He said that's why he killed her, but investigators found no evidence of abuse. Josh testified that the allegations were completely false and that he had no idea Zachary felt that way. Mental health experts disagreed on Zachary's diagnosis. Some said he had schizophrenia and depression, others said he had paranoid delusions. One psychiatrist testified that Zachary was driven by psychosis. But the judge concluded that while Zachary likely suffered from mental illness, he knew right from wrong. Zachary was convicted of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and aggravated arson. He was sentenced to life in prison with eligibility for parole after 71 years. At sentencing, Judge D. David Gay addressed Zachary directly. "The thing that bothers me is that you have shown no regrets, no remorse in murdering your own mother at age 15. Zachary's paternal grandmother, Gail Cron, begged for leniency. She said that if Zachary had received proper mental health treatment after his father's death, this would not have happened. She added, "Zach is not a monster. He's a child who made a horrible mistake." But the judge disagreed. Evidence presented at trial included Zachary's diary entry from the day of the murder, apps on his phone related to serial killers, and his complete lack of remorse when shown graphic photos of his mother's body. Zachary's case raises difficult questions about mental health treatment for juveniles. Did the system fail him? Would proper psychiatric care have prevented the murder? Or was Zachary simply incapable of rehabilitation? Today, Zachary Davis is incarcerated in Tennessee. He won't be eligible for parole until he's in his 80s, and Josh Davis, who survived the fire, lost his entire family in one horrific night. And that's the end of Tier 3. Thank you for watching, guys. If you made it this far, let me know your thoughts down below, drop a like, and subscribe if you haven't already. These 6 cases share disturbing similarities. They were all young. They all showed signs of pain, anger, or trauma. And in almost every case, the warnings were there, but people just didn't listen. Catherine and Curtis Jones suffered documented abuse that Child Protective Services failed to stop. Bresha Meadows begged for help before she pulled the trigger. Luke Woodham tortured a dog months before he killed his mother. Tyler Hadley told friends what he planned to do, but no one took him seriously. Zachary Davis showed clear signs of severe mental illness, but his treatment was discontinued. Tier 3, so far, has been the most difficult tier for me to talk about. How young is too young to be responsible for something like this? When does a victim of trauma become a perpetrator? And can we really call it justice if the system fails before the crime even happens? The truth is, There are no easy answers, just sadness, loss, and what ifs. Anyway, that's it for tonight. Thanks again for watching. Take care of yourselves, and as always, good night and sweet dreams.